Uh, Forgive me for being a little bit tongue-tied because I completely forgot I was going to be the presider over this Sunday. We have our guest speaker today, and like I said, forgive me, but I didn't get the full bio to introduce you. So if you would please come up and introduce yourself. I'm sorry. My profuse
I'm gonna
apologies.
bring my dog with me.
All right.
I can't imagine that I need this. Lori Stewart, you think I need this microphone?
It's Heidi who needs
Heidi,
it.
can you
not
hear me, Heidi?
You can put it down and.
Well, if you can hear me, I'm happy to use it. I just have to watch how loud I actually am.
Oh, well, you can
I would need, the Zoom people probably need some more volume.
You're it.
I don't know what that means.
Okay.
But I'm happy.
Using the microphone.
I'm happy to use the microphone. I really, it was just commentary on the fact that I'm loud.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Charles Fox. Some of you know me. I know some of you. I do work at the River Reporter newspaper, which is how Lori and I came to know each other originally, many, many years ago. And I write a column in the paper, a weekly column or a daily online, weekly in print. I write a column about arts and leisure and entertainment called In My Humble Opinion. And I'm a photographer. So when Lori asked me a couple of months ago, I think, if I would be willing or interested in coming and talking with you guys, several things went through my mind, including the fact that I didn't know how I would say no to Lori Stewart. So I said yes. And then I was asked what I would speak about, and I didn't know. And then Tom, of course, contacted me and said, we need to know what you're talking about. So I made things up and said, well, I could talk about photography. I am a photographer, and how that relates to whatever kind of spiritual enlightenment I might experience as we go along. I knew I was coming here and that I would be speaking to you guys in a group connected to some sort of spirituality, which is not really my strong suit. And Nora, I apologize. The first time you come here, you get me and my dog. And that's just the way it is. Hopefully you'll give them another chance after me. So when I was asked to describe what I would talk about, I just made up some words and said, well, I can talk about, I think I said, nature is my nurture, I think are the words that I used. Is that right, Lori? And in a sense, that's true. I was raised in a Jewish temple, and I don't want to say I had a strict upbringing, but I had a thorough Jewish education. Both of my parents made sure that that was the case, probably because neither one of them had that. And in the 50s and 60s, we were, climbing up toward middle class. And my parents were still part of assimilating, Jews assimilating into the country. And that was really important to them. I know for a fact that my parents had a hard time finding an apartment in 1950 because it was so close to everything that had gone down before. So I said I would talk about photography, and I can't do anything without talking about my dog. This is Gidget, Nora, and she is a service dog. That's why she's here. That's why she's in a bag on my side. You're jealous, right? Because she's just sitting here being a dog. I know. She was raised in this. And she is a seizure alert dog. I do have a condition which can cause seizures. I had one other service dog before that. Oh my goodness. My first service dog. And again, spirituality is really not my strong suit. It really isn't. Being raised the way that I was great. I didn't really want to go to temple after a period of time, and my mother was a good mother, and she said, when you're 18, you can make all those decisions you want, but when you're living here, you're going to go to temple and you're going to learn what Judaism is all about. I became very close with my rabbi, and I was Reformed Jew, which is great. My parents were both raised Orthodox, and they said, we're not going to do that. And so I was raised in a Reformed temple, not close to Binghamton, New York, on the banks of the Susquehanna River. So I grew up in nature. I was very, very fortunate being the time period that I was growing up. I was a block from the Susquehanna River. I thought I was Huck Finn and Tom Sawyer all rolled into one. And I grew up in a time where we could just bang out that screen door and mom would say, see you later. And we didn't have to be home until the streetlights came on in the summertime. And I lived on the river, very fortunate. My parents were able to acquire a cottage on Seneca Lake in the Finger Lakes. So during a good portion of the year, I was playing on the banks of the river, communing with nature. And the rest of the time I was in Seneca Lake, communing with nature. And in between, I was going to boys camp in Little Meadow, Pennsylvania, communing with nature. So nature kind of became my nurture. That's how I came up with that stupid conclusion that that's what I would talk about. But I knew once again that I was going to be talking here and thought I should somehow cater what we were going to discuss to the fact that we're here in Universalist Unitarian Fellowship. I've always thought it was the Universalist Unitarian Church, but maybe that's because this isn't a church building that it's called a fellowship. I don't know what the difference is between those two things, Lori. Can you tell me?
In this particular case, our founding minister, Ray Pontier, was very enamored with in the 1950s, there was something called a fellowship movement. And so there was a lot of small congregations that were coming together. Many of them were lay-led, but a fellowship doesn't have to be lay-led. There are Unitarian Universalism is it has congregational polity. That means that the congregations really get to decide, like how they function in the world. And so there are many congregations that have an aversion to the word church.
Like me.
Yes. And also the other thing to really understand is that the Unitarians were the kind of the very much the educated elite, for sure, in New England, and the Universalists were the ragtag folks. They met in tents and had revivals, and both of them, Universalism was a pushback against Calvinism. Calvinism says that it doesn't really matter what the heck you do. If you are not on God's list, then you are going to hell, and that's just it. So our country lived, through the 1800s, with a tremendous amount of fear. It didn't matter what you do, you were going to hell. And the Universalists just said nonsense. Nonsense. It's all dependent on your good works. And so they were the social reformers of the late 1800s and the early 1900s. The Unitarians were the intellectuals, and as soon as they got organized, the Transcendentalists came in and said, you don't even need this organizational stuff. So there would have been these different waves. And so, and some of them, the vestiges of them, like the fellowship movement, like people calling themselves a congregation and not a church. Basically, it is coming from this place of how are we most inclusive to people. And there's an awful lot of people who find their way into Unitarian Universalism who are very, very, very injured by their upbringing and their more traditional values. So hence, there are some congregations that no church, no so at any rate, so.
Well, thank you for that.
This is a fellowship.
I did read up a little bit before I came here. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. And I can see why Jews in particular are attracted to the Universalist Unitarian Fellowship, just as I discovered that Jewish people were attracted to Buddhism as well. When I first started studying, we were working together already by then at the Kadampa World Peace Temple right here in Eldred, New York. So what I can tell you, being raised on the banks of the river and communing with nature as much as I did, is that I started rejecting my Jewish upbringing. Not, I embrace Jewish tradition. I Today I would call myself culturally Jewish, which is a thing because I absolutely am Jewish. I embrace my Judaism, and yet I'm not an overtly religious guy. But I do honor a lot of the Jewish traditions because it makes me feel good, that I feel a sense of belonging. So that's a good thing. But I went to my rabbi, with whom I was very close, when I was 16, and I said, I don't want to do this anymore. And he said, why? And I had a few reasons, but I was a little bit of a hippie wannabe. It was 1968. I wanted to push away a lot of what I was expected to do and kind of branch out into a different world. And surprisingly, my rabbi said to me, I'm okay with that. He said, if you don't understand the principles of what it is to be a good person and to be an inclusive person and want to be inclusive in the world around you, you don't have to come into a temple anymore. I can't help you anymore if you're going to go out into the world and be a good Jew. And he was the rabbi. He had to say be a good Jew. Really, what he meant was be a stand-up human being. And he felt, and I think rightfully so, that if I didn't know the lessons by the time I was 16, 17 years old, I probably wasn't going to know them. So I started exploring the world on my own, and I realized where I was finding my peace and my happiness and my oneness with the world was with nature. I wasn't a photographer then. I know we're here to talk about photography and my dog, and I'm going to meander, I guarantee you, Nora. I apologize, because that's what I do. I mean, I fly from subject to subject to subject, but it all makes sense to me. I wasn't a photographer. I was a writer. The first part of my life, for those of you who don't know, the first 30 years of my life, almost 30 years, I was a performer. I was an actor. And my grandfather was a big band leader and got me very interested in the world of entertainment when I was 5 years old. I did a little recording for a friend of his of a song called Susie Snowflake, which they wound up using on a little show called Captain Kangaroo. And the very first job I ever got, I played the voice of a female snowflake, and that kind of, I think, imprinted the rest of my career. But I did get very involved with acting and performing. The very first time I stepped foot on stage was with the Triple Cities Opera in Binghamton, one of the townsfolk, and I was really just very taken with the world of opera, the theatrical world as we know it. And that's what I pursued for many, many years. And after I graduated from college, I went to New York. I got a job with the National Shakespeare Company. I was very fortunate. I had a modicum of success for a little while. Communing with nature was not a thing in New York City. Couldn't figure out how to do it, and didn't know that that's where some of my unhappiness was coming from. I guess I was lucky. I got offered a job in television, which I hadn't planned on doing. Went out to Los Angeles, where there were trees and mountains and plants growing. And I said, oh, this is better. This is better. I could breathe. I remember kissing the ground when I got to Los Angeles, even though I had never planned to go there. It wasn't a goal. It wasn't a dream. Sometimes, life happens. And I wound up doing a little bit of acting work in Los Angeles. That's why I went there. I went there to audition for a television series called Fame about the High School of the Arts. You're laughing. And I never came home because I got a job and I had to call home to my then husband, who was in New York and was a theater director. And I said, we're moving to Los Angeles. And he packed everything up and moved out, and we began our life there. So I had nature. I wasn't a photographer. He was a writer. I wanted to be a writer. He said, no, there's no room in this house for two writers. You're the actor, I'm the writer. Never the twain shall meet, which was a bone of contention, for sure. I won't bore you with the details. We were together for 18 years. It's one of the reasons I have great admiration and respect for Universalist Unitarian Fellowship because of its all are welcome policy. And I will tell you, just as an aside, not a fun time to be a gay Jew right now. So as I was preparing to come here and talk to you guys, I said maybe I should just switch it up and talk about that and talk about politics. I didn't want to do that. We all know what's going on. And knowing that there's a community out here to support is a good thing. It's not just this community in this room or the people listening to this or watching this right now. It's the community that we are a part of that I feel a tremendous, tremendous part of. And I could spend hours talking about community and my connection to it. And a lot of that has to do with being a part of the River Reporter. So I became a writer after my husband died. We were together for 18 years. He had a lot of problems, and he died by his own choice, which left me a little bit up the creek and looking for some sort of solace. And I started escaping to the mountains above California for more trees and quiet and peace and solitude, because nature always made me feel better. I took pictures of it. I wasn't a photographer. I visited here for almost 30 years before I said I'm gonna pick up my ass in California at the age of not a young age. I said I'm gonna change it up. I'm going home. I'm going back to New York because I need clouds. I need peace. I need quiet. I kept finding myself leaving the greater Los Angeles area after my acting career ended when I no longer looked 15 years old. That did all change. It all morphed. It all changed it up. And my husband, who didn't allow me to want to be a writer, was dead. I said, I'm switching it up. I started writing. I wrote quite a bit. I had a modicum of success in California writing some stuff. I started writing a column called In My Humble Opinion, which I brought with me when I decided to pick everything up and move here. And I was in LA for almost 30 years, and people said, what? You're going? I said, I got to go home. I couldn't constantly be looking to get into nature. I said, I need to live in a natural environment, which, Santa Monica, California was nice. I'm not an ocean guy. I'm a natural water guy, rivers, lakes, streams, ponds. So the ocean never did it for me. And I was very serious at that point about my writing career. And I was doing quite a bit of writing, not being a photographer at all. But I decided to pick up, move everything. I've been visiting here for years and years and years, and I will say I never found a community more inviting. And all my times of visiting here, and I have extended visits, I said nobody ever looked at me twice. Nobody said, "Who's that gay guy?" No, I never experienced any kind of homophobia. Nothing but a welcoming environment here in Sullivan County. And I said, I think I can live there. And I think I can live in nature, and I just kept waiting for an internet connection. And when it happened, I picked myself up and I moved here. I got offered a job at a newspaper. I came here to write plays and books and novels. I had great ideas of what I was going to do with my writing. And somebody had read a blog. I had an old blog years and years and years ago. Remember blogs? Out in LA, and I met someone. She said, "Oh, I read your blog." It was Lainey Santoro. Do you know Lainey? Remember Lainey Santoro, Lori? And she was the editor, I believe, at that time, at the Town Crier newspaper based in Livingston Manor. And she said, "We want you to work for our newspaper." I said, I don't do that." She said, "We want you to do that." She was a photographer. I said, "Well, I guess I could give it a shot." So I started writing In My Humble Opinion. I don't think I called it that at that time. For the Town Crier. Began writing a column about the world of arts and entertainment, leisure, blah, blah, blah. And people liked it okay. I didn't think I was particularly good at it, but it was a paycheck and it was here. And people did start to respond a little bit. Fred Stabbert bought the Town Crier and absorbed it into the Sullivan County Democrat. We're going back quite a ways. And in absorbing it into the Democrat, he absorbed me momentarily. So I just came along for the ride, and I started writing reviews of high school plays and going to the Forestburg Playhouse and doing whatever. And they said, well, we need pictures to go with this. And I said, well, get a photographer. And he said, that's not how it works, Jonathan. You got to take pictures. This was a good 20 years ago. I said, well, I'm not a photographer, I'm a writer. Well, you better learn how to take a few pictures. So at every meeting at the Democrat, somebody would say, well, we like what you wrote, but the pictures are terrible. And every time I said, I'm a writer, not a photographer. And Fred Stafford, I think, said, well, you better figure it out. And I went to Sumi Sullivan. I took a digicam course. I got a little digicam, click and shoot. What did they point and shoot? Started taking pictures. Using my pictures. They weren't very good. I didn't care. I really had an attitude, if you can imagine that, Lori Stewart. I had an attitude about it, but I was working, and somebody from the River Reporter started paying attention to what I was doing at the Democrat. And she was working with you then, right, Danielle Gable? And she said, let's have lunch. And we went and had lunch in Jeffersonville. And she said, I think you should come over to the River Reporter and do what you're doing. And I said, why on earth would I do that? And she said, well, because you're the River Reporter. And I liked Danielle, and we were doing business together in a certain way as far as working within the gay community, the LGBT community here in Sullivan County. And I said, okay. Somehow she convinced me to do that. So now I'm writing. I'm taking pictures, whether they were good or not. I'm switching over from the Democrat to the River Reporter. Lori, I think you were on a sabbatical. Maybe
I was probably at seminary.
I think you were. So I started
2006.
working with Danielle, and I will say, since I'm meandering and talking about a lot of things, including community, I wrote a column, and we said, what are you going to call your column? And I said, well, I could call it this, or in my humble opinion, and everybody said, let's call it that. So I wrote my first column for the River Reporter, and I said, hi, this is who I am. I was at the Democrat for a minute. I was at the town crier before that, and Lainey Santoro kept saying, you really need to figure out how to take pictures. And I said, here I am now at the River Reporter, and I'm doing this, and I'm going to express my humble opinion, which, as we all know, isn't as humble as we would like people to maybe think. That's the joke. And I wrote my first column and said, and I meant it then, and I mean it now. I am far more interested in your opinion, than I am in my own. It's just a device for me to write about the world of arts and leisure here. So I wrote this column and said, I'm going to do this, and hopefully we'll be okay with that. But believe me, I'm more interested in your opinion than mine. I wrote a review of a play at the First Playhouse that I did not care for. I said so. I didn't really mince words. And I'm walking down the street in Narrowsburg, New York. Somebody knocked on the window of what's now the Heron. What was it called? Main Street? I don't remember what it was called. Main Street Cafe? Chatterbox? I don't know.
I think it was beyond the Chatterbox.
Knocked
Main Street.
on the window, and I kind of turned around and said, who they trying? And it was a man. He pointed at me. He said, you come in here. So I went in, and he said, I just read that thing you wrote, and I disagree with you. I said, oh, that is fantastic. Let's talk about it. Close to 17 years ago, I was out walking one day with a dog, one of my many dogs. And by then I had graduated from a digicam to, I don't know, some kind of little Nikon camera with a little 1850 lens or something on it. I saw a bug on a plant or something, and I stopped to take a picture of the bug on the plant. Something changed. Took that photo and said, oh my God, I'm in love with photography. Something changed. My world tilted just a little bit. And that's when I realized that I could be a photojournalist, which is somebody who tells a story through photos and doesn't need the writing, but can use the writing as well. People start, Sandy Long once said to me, oh my gosh, I felt like I was at that festival, even though we couldn't make it, because you went there, Jonathan, and you took pictures, and it told the story. So I realized that photography could enhance the written word. And I started getting really into photography. I am very fortunate. I live in the woods. I have a beautiful home in a beautiful county in a beautiful town that I cherish. And I have spent the last 17 years or so with my association at the River Reporter. I feel very fortunate. I'm not here to, kiss up to Lori Stewart. That's the last thing I would ever do in a million years. She's well
You
aware
would
of
do
that.
him any good, Ray.
Wouldn't do me any good. But I feel very fortunate that I am at the River Reporter doing what I do because now I am officially a photojournalist. I'm a member of the National Photographers Association and a member of the National Columnists Association. I get to do something I love very much and discovered through that something I never saw coming. I never wanted to be a photographer. I never thought about being a photographer. I always wanted to be a writer. Somebody didn't want me to be a writer. Circumstances changed and I became a writer and I love what I do. I really love what I do. I hope that's obvious in what I do and how I do it and when I do it. When Lori asked me what I was going to write about and Tom sent me a note, saying, what are you going to write about? I considered just calling it live to work or work to live because I do both. I work to live, like millions and millions and millions of Americans, and certainly those of a certain age, we have to work to live. Thankfully, I live to work. I don't know what my life would be like without working. I've said to people every once in a while, I should probably think about retiring. I can't afford to. And luckily, I do something that you don't have to be 22 years old to do. I have a certain amount of experience doing what I do. And again, I do what I do. I live to work. I work to live in a community that has absolutely embraced me. There is no question about it. And the River Reporter has given me the opportunity to become, I think, a mildly vital part of the community. And one of the ways I get to be that is through photography and through my writing. I discovered a long time ago, people love to have their picture taken of me in the newspaper. So what a better place for me to be than to be going to logging days here in Narrowsburg and ask parents if I could take a picture of their kid wearing their plaid shirts and then see the joy on their faces when they're in the paper or they're on our Facebook page or on our .com. I like making people happy. I like being a small part of bringing some happiness to people, which is not really, I don't think it's my strong suit. I'm a little bit of a, Debbie Downer when it comes to life as we know it. But because of my work, it allows me the opportunity to let go of any angst I might have when I leave the house and know that I'm going to go out there, go to logging days, take some pictures, hopefully some good ones, write about it. If Lori said to me, I need you to tell the story of logging days without writing a single word, I know that I can do that because that's what a photojournalist does. And conversely, if she said, you know what, we don't want to use any pictures this time, just write the words and let's see what kind of, I think I could do that as well. But I would be remiss if I didn't mention the fact that I'm doing all of this with a dog on my hip. And I did say that that was part of my double header today. And it's something we could talk about at another time because I'm not a church guy, I'm not a temple guy, I'm not an organized religion guy. And I have come to believe, meandering through this, that if there is a God, it's this. And when I wrote Dharma's obituary for the River Reporter, it was called God is Dog Spelled Backwards. And I believe that. So the dog at my side is everything, and she makes it easier to take pictures. I find that when I'm out in the world, Nora, and I'm talking to like some guys, volunteers at the fire department, they're like, beer drinking guys, and the dog will always make somebody smile. When I see kids and they're a little nervous or something or shy, then I say, look at the dog. They light up like a Christmas tree. So Dharma before her and now Gidget, if people don't want me in the room, they're going to invite me anyhow because I'm going to bring the dog. So that's a good thing. That's a good thing. And I did find, as much of an extrovert that I am, I like being behind the camera. I really do. I'd rather be in the background with the dog, take the foreground. Everybody wants to see the dog. I think it makes me more palatable. People want to see the dog. And I'm happy that people want to see the dog. And I'm happy to be able to show people who aren't dog people what it's like to be in the presence of what could be considered God. It's as close as I get to spiritualism, spirituality. The closest I get is my work, photographing the natural world around me, writing about it, talking about it, and doing it all with a dog. So I do consider myself very fortunate. I really do. I'm not a I feel blessed kind of guy. Not that there's anything wrong with it, but it's not me. I'm a little bit of an acerbic, uh, probably self-deprecating kind of guy, but I do have my moments, and some of those are like being here with all of you today. I can have a moment and realize that there's still good in the world. It's been a difficult week, Nora, for all of us. I don't know what's to come. I don't think any of us know what's to come. But I do know that through a group like yours and a community like ours, hopefully we're gonna make it through it. I hope it's not my middle name. But if I can bring a smile to someone's face, if I can get them to light up or lighten up just for a moment because Gidget's in the room, then hopefully I've done my job. Thanks.
Thank you very much. That was very good. Uh, Okay, I believe, any discussions, questions, anybody wants to bring up?
Thank you for a very personal presentation.
You're welcome. I never know what's going to come out. That's why I don't prepare, and then I never know what's going to happen.
That's just fine.
I appreciate that.
And so let me find some appropriate spoken words. Like I said, I apologize for not being better prepared for this.
And then I have one more tune.
Oh, okay.
You know how informal we are.
Yes. And he's also appropriately introduced benediction. Be lamps unto yourselves, be your own confidence, hold to the truth within, hold to the truth within yourselves as to the holy lamp. Those of music.
So the words of this are snow on tree limbs branch across the space. Nature's language roots us in our place. Out of our grasp, but always within our reach. Nature's language speaks of loving peace. Snow on tree limbs branch across the space. Nature's language roots us in our place. Nature's language roots us in our place. Out of our grasp, but always within our reach. Out of our grasp, but always within our reach. Nature's language speaks of loving peace. Nature's language speaks of loving peace. Snow across tree limbs. Snow on tree limbs, branch across space. Nature's language roots us in our place. Nature's language roots us in our place. Out of our grasp, but always within our reach. Out of our grasp, but always within our reach. Nature's language speaks of loving peace. Nature's language speaks of loving peace. Last time. Snow on tree limbs branch across the space. Nature's language roots us in our place. out of our grasp, but always within our reach. Nature's language speaks of loving peace.
Will someone come forward to extinguish the chalice? Well, I could extinguish the chalice myself. And we have some coffee and refreshments available. Going into the back, and thank everyone for attending. Very much. Thank you, John.
Sharon, did you want to say anything?
Oh, forgot.
You're muted.
Sharon, you're muted. Sharon, you're muted.
Still.
You're still you're still muted. You're still muted.
She's got plenty to say.
Sharon.
Keep going. It seems like.
We cannot unmute you, Sharon. We can't hear a word you're saying. I'm sorry.
Let her on the ground so everybody can better.
Yes, she can walk around.
No.
She can walk around. What? You can go say hi.
Okay.
She waiting for the word.
Yeah, Jasper gets friends.